Will the Labour government ruin the UK housing market? Today I'm joined by Russell Quirk, a man who's not afraid to speak his mind. On TV yourself, Russell?
A little bit here and there,
There you go.
controversially, apparently.
Talk to me about the Labour government and your thoughts of whether it will affect the property market.
So, look, I know we probably on podcasts like this, and indeed on mine, we probably shouldn't do partisan politics, right? But the reason I think this is important is because actually I think that the Labour government's tenure, so we're seven and a half months in as we shoot this in mid-Feb, their tenure over the economy has been, let's just say, should I be nice? It's been somewhat questionable, I think, in the last few months since the budget. So we've had a huge tax burden introduced to businesses by the way of national insurance contributions. That's 20 billion quid. We've had this fictitious black hole that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, keeps talking about having to fill, even though the Office of Budget Responsibility can't actually find that black hole. We've had public sector employees being given huge pay rises. The borrowing level for government has increased. We're now seeing the spectre of inflation increasing. And also the Bank of England, as we shoot this, just a few days ago, said that they think that the UK's economy growth rate will be half what they thought it was going to be, 0.75% in 2025, rather than 1.5% in 2025. So I think it's fair to say that the Labour Party, the Labour government's handling the economy has not been great. However, all that said, I also think that because almost of that mishandling, because I think Rachel Reeves is a little bit ideological, she's still sitting there thinking like she was in the sixth form, which is, all property is theft and, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. This kind of, rather left-wing philosophy. If the economy doesn't perform very well on a macro level, if you like, on a fiscal level, what that means is that the Bank of England will have to reduce interest rates even more, as they literally have just done as we're shooting this mid-Feb. We've now seen, I think, our third interest rate reduction since the government came into power in July 2024. The property market does rely on, I think, two things, it's fair to say, in my view. Argue with me by all means. One of those things is affordability, which is driven mainly by the cost of money, interest rates. So interest rates are coming down. And the other thing is sentiment. Now, those two things are linked because if you as a potential buyer are thinking about the cost of your mortgage and you're looking 6, 12, 18 months forward, thinking, well, it looks like rates are going to come down. The Bank of England rates are going to come down. And therefore, some mortgages, probably not fixed rates, but variable rate mortgages are going to get cheaper. That actually gives you a bit of confidence that maybe you can now step and either put your foot on the first rung of the property ladder or change up from your first time buyer home to another one. So there's an irony here that although I don't have much faith in the Labour government from an economic point of view, I do think we need to keep an eye on employment because, in hospitality, for instance, particularly, that increase in national insurance and the increase in the minimum wage, they're both going to conspire to mean that lots of pubs and restaurants and cafes probably can't afford to open and will close. So there will be an increase in unemployment. We've seen Sainsbury's laying people off, BP laying people off. I'm afraid here's a totally partisan political point to make. No Labour government in history has ever left unemployment lower at the end of their term than when they started. That's just a matter of fact, right? So Labour are terrible for employment. In fact, they promote and produce more unemployment. So we've got to watch that. Obviously, if you're worried about your job, it's not really conducive with jumping on, a house purchase. However, despite the fact that there are some political challenges out there, and Rachel Reeves, and again, if I'm being kind, let's just say hasn't found her feet yet in terms of common sense on the economy. For the property market and for home buyers and sellers, I actually think it's going to be all right. I think we're going to be divorced and removed from deficits, borrowing costs from a government point of view, black holes, GDP growth. Even if we hit recession, and actually, and here's a little bit of reassurance, the definition of a recession is negative GDP growth. In other words, the shrinking of the economy 2 quarters running, right? We've just started to see, I think the last 2 months as we sit here filming this, we've just started to see GDP shrinkage. So we are well on our way to a technical recession. Does that matter to the average buyer and seller, the average consumer, if the cost of borrowed money is coming down, so the cost of their credit card, their mortgage and so on? No. So I think, and look, what do I know? I'm not seeking to sound like an economist, by the way. I'm really not. I only got 2 O levels. But my experience of property markets and governments and politics now is sufficient to say that even though the fiscal economy might be mishandled by Rachel Reeves, I think it is, I think us in the property market are going to be really protected from it. In fact, if anything, I think we might start seeing an acceleration in house prices because money's getting cheaper.
Thank you for your time today, Russell.